Now here's one more piece. Survivors of Nigeria's baby factories share their stories. Girls who fled Boko Haram attacks are being enslaved and raped by human traffickers who then sell their babies. Women and children gather at the Manadatu IDP camp to listen to members of the Borno Community Coalition speak about the dangers of human trafficking. As 16-year-old Miriam stepped out of her tent to fetch water near the Mindanatu internally displaced persons camp in Nigeria's northeastern Borno state in January last year, a middle-aged woman knew as Auntie Kiki approached her. She asked Miriam was interested in moving to the city of Enugu to work as housemaid for a monthly salary. Miriam, who's now 17, wasted no time in accepting the offer and began to prepare for a trip to the east the following day. She told her 17-year-old cousin Rhoda about it and advised her to approach Auntie Kiki. When Rhoda, who is now 18, met Auntie Kiki the next morning, she asked if there was a job for her too. The woman quickly agreed, so Rhoda packed her bags. We're both very excited to travel to Enugu, Miriam says. We had suffered so much for 4 years and we're happy to go somewhere new to start a new life. Both girls who used to live in the same compound in Bama fled the northeastern Nigerian town in 2017 when Boko Haram stormed the area, burning down houses and kidnapping women and children. Miriam and Rhoda fled, leaving other members of their family behind. They do not know what happened to them. The two girls trekked for several days to reach Mindanatu, where they remained for nearly 2 years before their trip to Enugu in southeastern Nigeria. In Mindanatu, Miriam and Rhoda lived together in a small bamboo tent inside the camp that houses more than 5,000 people who, like them, had fled Boko Haram. Life was tough in the camp. Food was short in supply, and the IDPs had to beg on the streets of the nearby town to be able to get enough food to eat. So the girls jumped at the chance of paid jobs in Enugu. They did not have time to tell anyone they were going. For 2 years, Miriam and Rhoda lived in a hut like this before they were transferred to Enugu. They first traveled with Auntie Kiki to Maiduguri, then a 12-hour journey to Abuja followed. They spent the night there in the home of a woman who knew Auntie Kiki. The next day, after a 9-hour journey, they reached Enugu. Auntie Kiki took them to a compound where she handed them over to an elderly woman she called Emma and told the girls to do whatever the woman asked of them. The compound had 2 flats of 3 beds, each filled with girls, some of them pregnant. Auntie Kiki said it was where they would be working. At first, the girls thought their job were to clean the compound and do household chores as Auntie Kiki had led them to believe. Their new employers, however, had other ideas. Emma asked that we stay alone in separate rooms for their first night. We were surprised because the other girls in the compound were sharing rooms, some of which had 4 people in them. Late that night, according to Miriam, a man walked into her room, ordered her to take off her clothes, held her hands tightly, and raped her. The same thing happened to Rhoda, but her rapist was much more brutal. When I tried to scream, he covered my mouth and gave me a dirty slap. If he saw tears in my eyes, he slapped me even more. The next day, the girls were moved to shared rooms with the others, only being sent to single rooms when they were required to work. Both girls said they were raped almost daily by several different men. They believe Emma and Auntie Kiki worked together in the same trafficking cartel, that Emma is the leader of the group. They also could make out for sure, however, that 2 women communicated with each other, the men in Igbo, the language spoken in southeastern Nigeria. Within a month, they were both pregnant, but still they were raped. It doesn't matter whether you are 6 weeks or 6 months pregnant, said Rhoda. If any of the men wants you, you can't say no. It was pointless to try to escape, they explained, because the compound was guarded by men with guns. Around a dozen girls were living in the compound when Miriam and Rhoda first arrived, but the number would change as the girls gave birth and were sent away before new girls were brought in to produce more children for the cartel. Miriam gave birth to a baby boy in the compound with the assistance of a midwife who was called in from the outside, but her son was taken from her. 3 days later, she was blindfolded and taken to a bus station where traffickers made sure she boarded a vehicle back to the north. They didn't want me to know the way to the compound. That's why they covered my face. She explains I was given 20,000 naira, about $55, to assist in my transportation to my destination. She first went to Abuja, where she spent the night on the street before boarding a commercial vehicle back to Maiduguri. Miriam does not know how much her baby was sold for. Some traffickers let their victims leave after giving birth because they believe if the girls stay for too long, they could develop a plan to expose the trade, explains Abang Robert, public relations head of the Capricorn Development and Peace Initiative, an NGO focused on rehabilitating victims of human trafficking in Nigeria. They're scared of sabotage. Baby factories are more common in the southeastern part of Nigeria, where security operatives have carried out several raids, including an operation last year when 15 pregnant girls and 4 children were rescued. Women and girls are held captive to deliver babies who are sold illegally to adoptive parents, forced into child labor, tracked into prostitution, or, as several reports suggest, ritually killed. Boys are more expensive than girls in the baby sale business, said Comfort Egboko, head of the southeastern arm of Nigeria's anti-trafficking agency. The National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons at her office in Enugu. Male children are often sold for between 700,000 naira, which is $2,000, to 1 million naira, which is about $2,700, while female babies are sold for between 500,000 naira, about $1,350, and 700,000 naira. The majority of buyers are couples who have been unable to conceive. Anyone caught buying or selling or otherwise dealing in the procurement of children can be prosecuted. The baby trade remains prevalent in Enugu. In recent years, security officials have carried out several undercover operations targeting suspected baby trafficking cartels, whose operations the Enugu state government said aided by some agencies and unscrupulous state officials. To avoid suspicion in the local community, baby factories are often presented as orphanages, experts explain. Baby factory operators hide under the canopy of orphanages, Egboko said. She believes people receiving babies from them either do not know or do not care that they are not really orphans. NAPTIP arrested and prosecuted a number of people involved in the sale of babies in the southeast in recent years. Egboko explains. There are currently around half a dozen cases going through the court system. We are now working in collaboration with the Association of Orphanage Homes Operators in the entire Southeast to identify, arrest, and prosecute such people, she adds. There is no official data to show how many babies are bought and sold each year in Nigeria, nor are the number of girls exploited by human traffickers. The United Nations estimates, however, there are about 750,000 to 1 million persons who are annually trafficked in Nigeria, and that over 70% of those are trafficked across the states. 23% are trafficked within states, while 2% are trafficked outside the country. Human trafficking widespread, said Miriam Rhoda after she gave birth to the boy. Cousins were reunited in Mindanatu, where they are now living together in a small mud house not far from the camp they were trafficked from. Luckily, we got to Mindanatu on the same day, says Miriam, who spent weeks on the streets of Abuja before she was able to make her way back to the Northeast. We thought it was no longer safe to stay in the camp, so we talked to the man who owns the place to let us stay here. To earn money, the girls not make and sell groundnut cakes at a mini kiosk just out their compound. They were not the first to be trafficked from Mindanatu. There have been many reports of girls trafficked from the camp to cities in Nigeria and to countries including Italy, Libya, Niger, and Saudi Arabia. The victims are often promised good jobs only to end up being exploited or enslaved. Although widespread in Mindanatu, the problem of human trafficking is not peculiar to this area alone. It is common across the entire Northeast region. The 2019 United States Department of State Trafficking Persons revealed that sexual exploitation, including sex trafficking of IDPs, internationally displaced persons, in camps, settlements, and host communities around Maiduguri remained a pervasive problem. The report also notes that some security officials are complicit in these activities. NAPTIP says it was aware of high numbers of cases of human trafficking in Mindanatu and is increasing efforts to address the issue in the IDP camp in particular. The office has now increased surveillance in the IDP camp. Makita Ali, head of the NAPTIP office covering the Northeast region. We are working with the camp managers and camp officials to whom we've given our toll-free numbers and told us to call them if they suspect any case of human trafficking. Inside the camp, However, residents remain worried about the number of cases. Community leaders say the lack of adequate amenities like potable water facilities and cooking stoves mean that people have to walk long distances in search of water and firewood, making them vulnerable to human traffickers who prey upon them. If we had easy access to food and firewood, there would be little talk of human trafficking, says Mohammed Lawan Tuba, a community leader in Mindanao. Criminals take advantage of our children when they go out to find what they need to keep them and their families alive. Human rights campaigners are running sensation campaigns which aim to educate displaced persons about the dangers of human trafficking and how to spot the signs of it inside the IDP camp. But Yusuf Kroma, head of the Borno Community Coalition, a group of aid workers assisting survivors of the Boko Haram insurgency through skills acquisition program, says displaced persons in Mindanao are really struggling to survive as they are not getting enough food supply from the government, and that is why it is easy for traffickers to exploit those who are desperate for jobs. Sensation programs have to be matched with adequate food security and availability of food and social services by the state government to effectively tackle human trafficking. Like I said, it still goes on. It still goes on. I just watched a movie, like I said, like Cotton Twines, that says it still goes on. Whether they're kidnapped, whether they're promised jobs, whether they're taken in raids by soldiers, there's a lot of ways these young people wind up in any situations. So if it's happening now, it's still happening now on the continent. It's the same place where it's been happening. It's still happening now, 600 years later. I don't know why it's so hard to believe that it wasn't happening 500 or 600 years ago when there were no laws and there were no states and there was no soldiers or police or international governments or any kind of that. I don't know why it's so hard to believe that the reports about it happening back then 500, 600 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, it's so hard to believe when it's still happening today. This is an ongoing story. This is filed in 2021 with this story. This is Al Jazeera. And there have been reports about this going way, 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 way back. Even after Libya, when Gaddafi fell. Gaddafi had stopped a lot of the human trafficking and he actually gave people jobs. And when he fell, they went back to their old ways. So y'all can miss me with that. This stuff didn't happen or we were conquered or stuff like that. Come on now. This is a very ancient practice. And this is what people believe in. Now, is it perpetual slavery? It's not the same as not European. Europeans didn't even believe in this kind of slavery. And American slavery, it's completely different. But the thing is, this is the seed of it. How we as African Americans or black people or Negroes got over here. We weren't captured by white people. We were sold. So it's business. Just like this with them, it's business where they had these girls have babies for them, bore children. And after they were pregnant, they dumped them back on the street. That's slavery. Those were sex slaves. Those are baby farms. They're doing the exact same thing that, guess who? The Americans did. Use black wombs to produce babies for whatever, right? In this case, they wanted to send them to adopted parents all over the world. That's how come some of those so-called orphans wind up in Europe by using the wombs of these young girls. Same thing that the Americans did to produce slaves. It's a human endeavor, okay? They've been doing this forever. So we're going to just have to grow up and stop believing this white feminist rhetoric and realize that these are the facts on the ground. But anyway, I just wanted to drop this one. Thank you, Buliri, for sending this to me. Buliri's actually in Nigeria. He's the one that sent it to me. So miss me with that shit don't happen, all right? Because the Nigerian sent this to me. He's actually there right now. But with that, I'm going to jump off here. This is BGS out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.